Chris Parks from Change Healthcare. So when I first met Chris Parks, he was really just starting his journey, changing healthcare, listing, I think it was radiology prices online, if I recall correctly. I might be wrong. So, so everybody will mosey your way back to your seats, or at least keep your conversation down a little bit lower. I think we've got Chris's presentation up, and let's all welcome Chris Parks, somebody who's not just thinking about changing things, but really doing it, living the dream. So, big hand for Chris Parks.
Hey, that'll work. All right. Does it work? All right. Here, I'm tall. I got to stretch up here a little bit. Well, I'm a little nervous, and it's not because of you, but because my wife just texted me and said, "Cyber Monday, baby, get to work." I'm not sure how to interpret that. There may be some, I may be taking donations or start a med starter for my own funding here. So I'm Christopher Parks, and this is my family. And as you can see, boy, I can't roam. I need the handheld mic to roam. I'm such a pacer. But, oh my gosh, just a little bit about me and my really lazy dog that likes to take over the lounge chair there. I tend to be what I would call the Mr. Magoo of healthcare. I end up in really awkward situations often. I don't even know who this guy is. I was at a Saints game, and suddenly they said the Pope is coming, and this guy showed up in the hotel lobby. So obviously, I get into interesting circumstances. But as I like to describe myself, I am awkward. Again, Mr. Magoo of healthcare. I tend to just kind of stumble upon and either get really angry or frustrated, which becomes my driver to do something. Exercise physiologist by training, which means that I really wanted to be a PT or an AT with the pro sports team, and it doesn't quite work out that way, so I was too lazy to go on and become a physical therapist. While I was in school, I started an import-export company out of Indonesia. I accidentally stumbled into managing and operating diabetes treatment centers way back when Healthways was Diabetes Treatment Centers of America. And then I also did, how's this for boring, cost accounting, product line development way back when HCA used to be Columbia HCA. I'm going to just break that off their name badge. And then I ran a high-end seating and positioning wheelchair company, including Kaiser, managed care contracting, and then it ended up at Neoform in the dot-com heyday. I started with this company in '99. They went public, and immediately the market crashed, did a 20-for-1 reverse stock split, which was incredibly painful, and then was acquired by Johnson & Johnson. The general trend of all these things are that from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, I knew absolutely nothing about the next thing. So, just a first insight of living the dream, and I don't know if all of this is a dream or a nightmare. I'm sure it depends on what week or what day it is for you. But I can assure you, I'm living proof that when someone says, you're not qualified to manage diabetes patients, you're not qualified to sit down with CFOs for the central United States, it doesn't matter. Do it anyway. So all this started with Change Healthcare, not to be a little bit of a downer, but unfortunately, my parents both passed away within a year of each other, and I was the executor. And as I was taking care of dad's stuff with mom, I quickly realized just how convoluted and confusing all of this was. And my mom asked a really easy, obvious question that I could only answer 2 of the 3 points. And she said, honey, I just want to know who I owe, what I owe, and if it's fair. And being in managed care contracting, I could tell you who you owed, and I could tell you what you owed, but I couldn't tell if that was fair. And ultimately, before she passed away, being a very, again, naive and ridiculous son, she said, you've got to do something. I said, Mom, I will. And unfortunately, she passed away in hospice later that week. And several weeks after the funeral, I suddenly had that oh shit moment of, oh my God, what did I promise? What am I going to do? And that was the beginning of Change Healthcare. It is that short story that has continued to reinforce and kind of give me my second learning, and that is, embrace that why is much more important in life than what. And so as you're going through, I can assure you, every company that pitched, everyone that's ever worked in any company, the beginning of that company will continually change throughout the course of its growth. What it does, how it does it will forever change. But if everyone can rally around why it exists, why did it start, why are you there now to make a difference, that is what sustains the startup all the way through what is now Change Healthcare. So when we got started, ironically, it started out as MedBill advisor, it became MedBill manager, real MedBill, a lot of clinging on to transactions there. And then ultimately on a random kind of sporadic stroke of luck, we said, well, we're trying to change things. And we said, we're going to try to change healthcare, but there's no way that domain is available. So this is how scientific and strategic I am. Ironically, just happened to pull it up, and we were all arguing there's no way that domain would be available when one of the team members said, hey, I just got it. And I said, you just got what, an idea? Another name? He said, no, I just got changehealthcare.com. I said, well, I guess we just answered that question. So in 2007, I'd started with all those iterations and ended up in the Wall Street Journal by accident, and then again another Mr. Magoo moment. And it was at that moment that we magically raised $1 million. Now what I would tell you is the only reason why we raised $1 million is I met this really insightful set of folks who cared about the why. In other words, I couched it as, if someone's hair is on fire, they're the most motivated people that want to solve or find a solution to a problem. And it was that hair on fire phrase, ironically, that first garnered the attention of a small $40 million fund in Nashville, Tennessee. And it's that same catchphrase and that same why that had me traveling all across the country as we continued to raise more money. So once again, as I was having these conversations, and even here in New York, when I met with multiple folks, they met me, and ironically, I'm a very introverted, quiet, awkward individual, and every time I would meet with someone, when we were into kind of the beginning of the conversation, they say, well, you're too small, or you can't negotiate with payers, or no employer is going to pay you to do this, or you're in Nashville, Tennessee, that's just a bunch of overall wearing, chew tobacco, double wide living. They can't do anything down there. You can't have an impact. Once again, what I would tell you is I'm living proof that when people say that you're too small to do X, it doesn't matter. Do it anyway. And so in 2007 to 11, I was the founder and CEO, and we focused on consumers, employers, and third-party administrators. We raised several rounds of capital and grew to 28 employees. And ironically, again, another kind of truism, knowing that everyone that I was surrounded by, every venture capital person that I was around, every major employer, customer, be it Nissan, Cargill, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Empire State, name them all, Aetna, Cigna. When we focused on the strategy, eyes would blur, opinions would form, arguments would ensue. I even had Nissan say, there's no way that our orthopods and Blue Cross doesn't get us the best deal with every single orthopod across the country. They all are paid the same. When deep down inside, I knew that wasn't the case. And yet, through all of those conversations, through all those rounds of raising tens of millions of dollars, ultimately, when I honed back and refocused on why are we doing what we're doing, what is our purpose, why do I have this passionate group of people who are vastly better than me, smarter than me, more agile than me, why are they all surrounding and moving this ball forward? It was because of the why. It was because of that naive, ridiculous promise to try and do something. In 2011, I brought in professional management, air quotes, but actually I was tremendously lucky because I actually brought on the ex-CEO and president of Caremark CVS. He came out of retirement. He believed in what we were doing, about how we were doing it. He brought with him another gentleman that was a senior vice president, and I became the chief development officer. We brought on and focused on payers and employers, did another round of investment. We're up to over 80 employees, and this would have been the perfect time for me to say, I'm out. This is when founders get kicked out. This is when it's the obvious time that you're supposed to just gently go into the night and disappear. And luckily for me, I didn't listen to those people who say, this is when you're supposed to quit. I kept on trying to be focused on the team, the opportunity, and why. And luckily for me, both those guys said, where are you going? Why are you emptying out your office? We need you to help keep the team focused, and I stayed. In 2014, after 2 years, MDON bought Change Healthcare. And once again, I remained as the Chief Development Officer, and I took on the role of business development across the enterprise. And we added providers in that mix. And once again, that would have been the right time to leave when that inner voice is saying, hey, you're at the bat second time. You don't get that lucky anymore. You're not going to beat baseball odds. It's time for you to leave. And yet, after we got together with them, we realized the reason they acquired us is how and why we did things. That's what was the motivation. We were the sexy in healthcare. Oxymoronic thing to say, but we were what was interesting in a billion-dollar company that was focused on really boring claims transactional systems. To me, that boring was really interesting because it gave us the opportunity to start focusing on how do we get leverage out of all of this footprint in this infrastructure. And they liked how we acted and what we were about and why we were about, so much so that a year later, MDON rebranded the entire company as Change Healthcare. So in my mind, I like to think it was a reverse acquisition. And we focused on those enterprise synergies, on being able to reach out and see someone and say, hey, here's when someone's checking into a pharmacy or getting an eligibility check. Where are they? What are they doing? How do we reach them? How do we inject communications into the pharmacy system, as an example? Heck, Change Healthcare now prints over 300 million EOBs and another 500 million physician statements. That's not a bad footprint to work with. So it was interesting. In 16, well, what was a person and a naive promise has now grown up, and we actually process about 1.5 trillion of medical claims. Every year we do about 8 billion transactions, and we cover, well, this is a little ballpark, we'll say about 230 million Americans. So there's a ton of insights, a massive footprint, and a great deal of insight of everything flowing through what started out as a naive promise. In 17, we're now going to merge with McKesson. And ironically, we're going to double in size. We're going to be a 3-point-something billion dollar company. And I've been at this for 10 years. What I can tell you in this brief amount of time is I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about the motivation of why people do things and how something simple, concise, and elegant can be the greatest motivation for an entire team of 20,000 employees. I also realized that I did nothing in this entire journey. I was along for the ride, like Mr. Magoo, just kind of accidentally stumbling along, but being that one self-deprecating individual that people could point to, they could laugh at, they could commiserate with, they could trust, but also, in like manner, our customers and our partners could do the same thing. And through that journey, as I look about 17, I can actually say that I'm retiring. So with the merger of Change Healthcare and McKesson, that's going to be my opportunity to actually relax and rest. And I guess I need to get to work, apparently, for all these Cyber Monday deals. In this, look, I wish I had a magic recipe to tell you how do you live the dream. There is no way. What I can tell you is while you're muddling through this, there are a couple of truisms I can leave you with that actually helped me and through all the folks that I've had report to me, work with me, collaborate with me, and partner with me. And just as you can see there, I'm this goofy clown in my pajamas out in the snow in the back of our property. I don't know what I'm doing, but I try to focus on enjoying what I can do when I can do it at that moment. And so if there's anything I can leave you with in this very short time, these are the things that helped me start Change Healthcare, stay with Change Healthcare. Ironically, I'm actually on the board of several companies a COPD company, a company that just sold to Disney, and a board game company, ironically. These are the things that help me recenter. Be about the why. Why are we focused on this? But be naive, not naive stupid, but naive in that you don't know the majority of what you think you know. And when you're naive about it, you ask a lot more questions. You're much more curious. Be maniacally persistent, but humble. It's this persistence that got me past so many of the no's and the can't do's and the won't do's and the being kicked out of many venture capitalists' office, or being in front of a team of 10,000 folks at Change Healthcare that said, we've been doing this way forever. But being humble about understanding that there's a precedent and a history and helping them move forward. Timing is everything. God, I wish I would have thought about this in 2007. I would rather be 15 minutes ahead than years ahead of everyone else. It sounds stupid. You always want to be way out in front, but what I would tell you is nobody buys way out in front. Being 15 minutes ahead helps you be at the right place at the right time to make the biggest impact. And then lastly, you may think you know, but you don't. And even though you don't, and even though someone may say this won't work, or this doesn't match, or this isn't right, or this is too costly, or this is the wrong population to focus on, it doesn't matter. If you're focused on the why, do it anyway. Because what you're focused on now, how you execute, where you spend your time, I promise you, it will change. It will change forever. But if you're focused on why, and you share that, and you're openly able to convey that in such a way that other people can buy into it, maybe you too can kind of go for the ride on the coattails of a lot of smart folks that believe in you and believe in why you exist, and enjoy a 10-year ride like I have. And how's that for 10 minutes?
That was pretty amazing. That was awesome. Thank you, Chris. Big round of applause, Chris Parks. He's done it. Been there, done that. All you startups, ramp-ups, this is the man you guys want to be like when you grow up. So I love his story about humility and just being there for your people, sticking with a mission. That's very important.